Welcome to Be Schooled, a podcast by Stacy Blackman Consulting, bringing you insights, tips, and advice about all aspects of the MBA admissions process and business school experience. And now, here's your host, Social Impact CEO, Stanford GSB alum, and MBA admissions consultant, Chandler Arnold.
Hi, everyone. This is your host, Chandler. And one of the things that I love about being involved with this podcast is the opportunity to invite on friends and colleagues and mentors and all sorts of experts in the MBA space with expertise in all kinds of different facets of this project and this journey. But today, it's just us. I'm going to do something a little bit different, a little more personal. I've been reflecting a lot on my own MBA journey many years ago and on work that I've done with clients over the past 10 or 15 years and wanted to put together, I love a top 10 list. I wanted to put together a top 10 list of things that I wish I had known when I was applying to business school years ago. And specifically, this is things that I wish I'd known as I started the process. Some of these were lessons that I learned along the way with my own process. Some of these are lessons that I've learned with clients. Some of these are lessons I've learned from admissions officers or other SBC consultants. But I wanted to put together a little bit of a greatest hits for all of you, recognizing that this is the time of year when a lot of folks are really beginning to sort of get into high gear with round one applications and or beginning thinking about round two or subsequent rounds. So here we go. This top 10 list roughly starts chronologically with the early stages of the journey and then moves all the way through interviews with a little twists and turns along the way. So here we go. Number 10. This one has to do with career aspirations and short and long-term goals. I really wish that I had spent more time up front really thinking through the specifics of my career goals. Now, I got there, but I got there a little later in the process than I wish that I had. This content can be daunting. It's a complicated set of questions. And when I started the process, I felt like I had a pretty good idea of what I wanted to do with my life long term and the sort of shorter term goals for say 5 or 10 years after business school. And I did know a lot about that. So some people are very clear that they don't know what they want to do. And so they know they need to do a lot of work in this category. I was a little bit different in that I thought I had a pretty clear idea. So I sort of underestimated the amount of work and effort and energy and thoughtfulness and conversations and introspection that it would take for me to kind of get to that really clear picture. There's a lot of things that each of you can do in that category. And there's another great podcast that I recorded with our colleague Christina a few weeks ago, specifically about short and long-term goal setting. But while the content is really complex and really personal, the format and the structure, especially of what you end up with, of that articulation of your career aspirations and goals, is actually pretty simple. And there's a pretty clear framework that you can use. And I've joked and laughed on other versions of this podcast by saying that this is a little bit like career goal Mad Libs. So here we are. I'm going to give you my career goal Mad Lib almost as a sort of fill in the blank set of sentences that you can begin to work with as a framework for thinking through these various questions and how they connect together. Now, I'm being a little tongue in cheek here, but I actually do believe that a framework and that an idea of what your end result statement about these career aspirations and goals might look like can really be helpful so that if you have a clear picture of what you want at the end, you know where to start. So that career Mad Lib might look something like this. My passion is all about blank. As you can see from my experience, A, experience B, and experience C. My ultimate career aspiration is to serve as dream job, title, and function at a group like dream company or organization X or Y, so that I can, and here you would describe the change that you want to make in business or in the world. To get there, after earning my MBA, I plan to spend X years working in job function 1 in industry or sector 1, while I will learn skills C and D. Then I would like to transition to job function 2 in industry sector 2, where I would spend Y years learning skills E and skills F to prepare me for the dream role I described earlier. And again, I'm being a little glib here, but this framework really does work. I would say force yourself now, if you're just starting this process, to fill out as many of these blanks as you can, and then really push yourself, really challenge your thinking. Use the blanks that you have a harder time filling in as an indication of the areas that you need to explore more. Talk to people in these spaces and refine, refine, refine. Ultimately, this statement, which for all of us really still is a work in progress, but ultimately this clearly articulated statement will become the North Star for really everything else you do in your application. And that brings me to secret takeaway or tip number 9, which is all about what I call story mapping. And this is related to that kind of North Star that we were talking about just a minute ago, related to your career aspirations and goals. I want you to understand that all of the different stories and experiences that you share and the different parts of your application should come together in a cohesive and compelling and consistent overarching narrative about who you are, what you're about, and what you want to do with your life. I think that starts with where you are now, why you want to go to business school, what you want to do after business school, and where you ultimately want to take your career. What you don't want to do is, have a couple of stories that you tell in your essays that are sort of reiterated in your letters of recommendation, that show up on your resume, that you might mention in your interview. And that's kind of giving the admissions office the same story several times in sort of a duplicative and redundant matter. What in a duplicative and redundant way. That's not what you want. What you want is to weave together a series of stories from different perspectives across all of the different elements of this application in a thoughtful and focused way, so that your application becomes more layered, more nuanced, more powerful. And you should think about each of these pieces, the essays, the recommendation, the resume, the interview, as building blocks. They should each be sort of beautiful and powerful in their own rights, but they also function together cohesively as independent pieces of a larger whole that's telling this larger story about who you are and what you want to do with your life. That way, you can have a recommender touch on a story that you might have shared in your essays, but you want them to do that in a way that is additive, that adds a different perspective, that adds additional context, that talks about how that great thing that you did compared to, great things they'd seen from other similar people at similar phases in their career over the course of the recommender's lifetime. That's what you want to do. You want all of these pieces to be additive, and you want them to be sort of consistent with regard to that sort of North Star journey narrative that you're on. The applicants, I think, that understand this, that map out these different stories and slot them into these different places in their applications, those are the ones that really present compelling, powerful stories that make those applicants get